Hello and welcome to Spotlight On. I'm your host, Lawrence Purrier. Today the spotlight is on Ethan Clift. Ethan and his wife, Allison Clift-Jennings, are at the helm of a new venture, Tonic Audio Labs, and are set to roll out their first product, Lumos, early in 2021. Lumos uses artificial intelligence to spark creativity and help artists get unstuck so they can finish more songs. With better quality than a free app, but more user-friendly than most existing digital audio workstations, Ethan and Allison are crafting Lumos to become as essential to artists as the instruments they play. Ironically enough, Ethan and I had some tech gremlins harassing us throughout our talk. If any signs of our spotty connectivity impact your enjoyment of our conversation, I apologize in advance. And now, Ethan Clift. I'm so intrigued by what you're up to that I'd like to break the format a little bit.
Okay.
Normally I like to talk through sort of somebody's background and path and what led them to where they are today. And I think we could get to that, but I'm so intrigued by your startup that I was wondering if maybe we could start a little bit with you telling me, you know, what you're up to, what problems you're trying to solve, what the technology is. It all seems so fascinating from what I've read on the screen that I'm sort of beside myself to hear about it.
Oh, awesome. Okay. So this is really our flagship product. We just started this company in January. We decided on one product to start because it's such a robust product. I mean, there's so much to build just within that one product. It's almost like building a cell phone and then also building software on top of the cell phone. So it's a pretty hefty lift. So so it's just me and Allison. Allison's our CTO, and she does everything from full stack engineering to hardware design and electrical engineering. So it's both software and hardware. And so thankfully, because this product really covers the gamut, you know, from low-level software to high-level software, low-level hardware to industrial design, you know, which dials to choose, the encasement, battery, you know, choices about battery power. You know, do we use a barrel jack or we use USB-C? Wow. Do we use, you know, I mean, the choices are really, really just, there's just a plethora of choices to make on the design of this product. So we have one product working on, it's called Lumos. And we named it Lumos because we really wanted to develop a product that we felt like would light the way for songwriters. Well, let me tell you a little bit about the origin of the design of the product first, because please. I think that's important. So when Allison was, she was the CEO of a different tech company in the blockchain space, and she was, it was focused mainly on the automotive transactions. So, you know, cars being able to go under toll road, you know, boundaries and pay automatically, things like that. You know, so transactions over using the car's internal system, essentially. So not using your cell phone or anything like that. So she was visiting some of these larger car manufacturers across, you know, overseas. She had these really, really long plane flights. And so she started designing, you know, just with her laptop, she started designing the specs for a device that would be AI powered, essentially, but it was almost like a musical instrument, like almost like a keyboard, but it was AI powered, and you could make sounds and make unique sounds, and then, you know, put those sounds together and create songs. And so she came to me with that idea, and I was like, you know, it's really fascinating because AI, you know, is so misunderstood in the music industry, I think, right now. And there's a lot of fear around it and just a lot of confusion around what can it bring to music without taking away the creativity of the individual, you know, songwriter and the songwriting process. So I thought it was an interesting idea, but it felt a little niche, almost like a theremin, almost like a technologically advanced theremin or something, you know.
I mean, that alone, if that was your pitch, I'd want one.
Right. Well, that's what she said. She's like, I'd want one of these. And I was like, yeah, but And so I just wasn't that excited about it, right? And so I've always done sales, marketing, and branding, and ran startups as well. And so for me, I came from more of a background where I like to figure out new business models, or change existing business models to solve problems that already exist for people. So say mostly in the creative space. So musicians are making more lattes than they are songs. So let's get them more paid gigs, where they're actually getting paid a living wage. So that was my goal with my music startup. And so when Allison and I came together on this, it was like, okay, let's get us to a place where it's something I'm excited about, where it's changing the way that they do things currently and making them so much better that they can't live without this. That was what I wanted to see from this device. So we went from being kind of like an electronic theremin to something more along the lines of a songwriting collaborator. So where the product is right now is it's about the form factor of a Nintendo Switch. Are you familiar with the Nintendo Switch? Yeah.
Sure am, yeah.
So it's about that size. It's portable in nature. You could take it in your backpack with you. Our goal with it is really to make it as indispensable as your primary instrument. So if you're used to, carrying your ukulele around or whatnot, you carry your ukulele around, but you also carry around the Lumos with you. So basically our primary goal was just how do we help songwriters finish songs? We know from every level, from those folks who are just, they have an acoustic guitar and they have a notebook and they're always writing their songs in their notebook. From those guys to ladies that are just into their DAW and they write songs directly out of that. We knew that there was a range with technical expertise and others without technical expertise. And we wanted to create a device that was powerful enough to help both of those types of users, finish their songs. So that's how we came up with the Lumos, is that we just decided it was just going to be a songwriting device. That's it. And so, yeah, tell me what you'd like to know about it in particular.
Yeah, I mean, you've said a few things that I don't want to make any assumptions about, okay? You said it's AI powered.
Yeah.
You said it helps finish songs, or it's a songwriting collaboration tool.
Yeah.
What does that imply? Like, is it giving you writing prompts? Is it actually saying, oh, I see you've gone from 1-4-5, now you need a bridge, or what's the thing it's doing for you?
Yes, so that's a great question. So there is we kind of broke down the songwriting process into like left brain processes and right brain processes. And the right brain processes are the creative part, like thinking of lyrics, thinking of a bridge, thinking of a melody, things like that. And one of the things that we noticed when we did a bunch of customer development interviews with different types of songwriters, and when the folks that were really into using their DAW for writing songs, what was taking them so long, and the reason why they would get so stuck, is that they weren't great at the right brain side of writing songs. They're really good at the left brain, like finishing the song. It's kind of like a producer. Like I know that I need a bridge. I know that I need a chorus. I know that I need some sort of rhythm. And they were always thinking in that sort of left brain, like finish it, sort of task-minded processing. And that was like holding them up from actually being creative and utilizing the right brain. So what we decided was that we were going to create something very, very simple, unlike a DAW, where you'd have to relearn another system. Like nobody wants to relearn another system. So the user interface had to be super intuitive, something that you could pick up and understand how to use pretty much right away. So something that was similar to other tools you've used in the past, maybe, like your phone. So we decided on a touch screen that was about 7 inches across. And then we have 4 knobs. So we have, or dials, if you will, one on each corner. And then we have 3 buttons in between those dials on each side. And so we keep it as simple as possible. And to compare it to something, I don't know if are you familiar with Teenage Engineering's OP1? Have you ever heard of that device?
No, in fact, I was
Okay.
going to tell you that I have some familiarity with. I was going to try to hold up my laptop. I'm sitting in my home studio right now, so I have my keyboards
Yeah.
over there. I have a DAW on this very same laptop, but
Yeah.
I'm not as much of a gearhead. I'm basically a couple of synthesizers into a box kind of person. I don't have a
Yeah. Yeah.
bunch of.
Yeah. Okay.
So
Okay. So this you would appreciate. I think you'd appreciate what Teenage Engineering's done, but it's essentially it's just a super well designed it's basically a synthesizer. There's sounds in there. There's ways also you get a radio frequency so you can like record the radio. There's only 4 tracks. But what's interesting about it, it's really uniquely designed. In fact, they sell like MoMA sells it in their gift shop online.
oh wow.
Yeah, so it's like it's really, really novel and the buttons, just have like a quality to them. Everything about it just it seems really well thought out, right? And so we were really inspired by what they had done. But we would, we bought one because we had to try it, of course. And they had become so popular when they first sold it. It was like $7.95, I think, or something like that. And then now they sell it for $13.95. So I mean, very rarely do you see something go up in price, right?
Yeah, right, right. With the decimal point after the 5.
Exactly. 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 So their product is a great example of something that it has the same form factor. It's portable device. Their battery power lasts forever. It seems like 2 days, and it's really fun to play with. Very unique sounds you can create out of it. But one of the things that I found frustrating is that it literally, like, you have to learn a new system, kind of like, learning a DAW or something like that. Like there is still an element of what we call menu diving, where, you have to shift. Each button has like 3 different functions, and you have to press shift, or you have to do multiple things and kind of understand how the whole system works. So we wanted to avoid that if we could, because we want people to get the device, unbox it, and be able to get started right away, right? That's the goal. We don't want them to have to spend 8 to 12 hours doing tutorials to even figure out how to put together a song. So part of our device is the user experience, which is all the things you described, like setting up prompts, giving them options on, structures of songs. So, this is the typical maybe Beatles song structure. Do you want this structure or a different structure to start with, right? So you start with templates. And then the AI-powered part is, I would say that it's not the most important feature of our product. I would say the most important feature of our product is really, it's really best illustrated by sort of I have an axis of 2 different factors. One is, ease of use. How easy is it to use? And then how high of a quality output can you get out of it? Mm. And so we went for the highest quality output with the highest ease of use, essentially. And so like a DAW would be high quality output, even higher than what we can create in the Lumos, but the ease of use is not very high, right? So
just
for
to extend
us,
the metaphor or the analogy for 1 second, and sort of like a toy would have very, very high ease of use but low output.
Yes. Okay. Yes. So we didn't want it to be quite a toy, right? We wanted it to be fun and engaging, and we wanted it to be something where, you can brush your teeth in the morning, come up with a riff maybe that you want to throw into, one, section of the song. And then maybe you come back in the afternoon and you add another section of the song. But you can do it in small increments. You don't have to sit down like you do on your DAW for 3 or 4 hours. We want it to be, easy to use, easy to collect things. So one of we always joke around that our biggest competitor is not a DW. It's not, it's not GarageBand. It's not any of these apps that do, AI accelerated sort of melody making. It's actually voice memo on your phone.
Yeah, I thought you were going there. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so many of our interviews, we would have these musicians that would be like, I have 20,000 voice memos on my phone. 20,000. I'm like, I don't even know how I would go back to find, you know, a riff that I had created, you know, 8 months ago or even a week ago. Like it's very, very hard to categorize and organize and then to bring those things to completion. Like, you know, you have a chorus from 4 months ago and then you have maybe, you know, a bridge, you know, that you wrote 2 months ago. How do you find those and put them together? And so that was really at the core of kind of where we started, was how can we be more effective at helping songwriters than voice memo? Because that's what they're using right now. And I always use this example. I'm not a huge Taylor Swift fan, but I am a fan of how prolific she is and how much she's been able to evolve over the years. And she has this really cool working relationship with Jack Antonoff, the producer, and he, you know, he's in his Brooklyn studio and she's wherever she is in LA or wherever, I don't know.
Somewhere fabulous.
Somewhere fabulous. Yeah. One of her 10 houses or whatnot. And so she's sending him over tracks. It's crazy. So she's either, you know, recording them in voice memo on her phone, or if she has like chords that she likes, she'll videotape her, like just use her video on her iPhone, and videotape her hands playing those chords and send it over to him. And so it's such a crude tool for what they're trying to do. And so we figured, instead of them, you know, sending back and forth files on Dropbox or texting over videos or things like that, why not create a very simplistic structure and an interface where they can just build out the song and collaborate, where they're sending across, you know, filling out the parts, different parts back and forth. And of course it's updating over the web. And then by the end, you know, they have a song that they can then output into their DAW, where they can track it and, you know, master it and edit it and all those things. So the finished product isn't meant to be perfect. You're meant to finish a song, and to be able to get all of those ideas into the song, into one place and together into, you know, taking all those disparate parts and putting them together into one song that you can then, you know, shoot off to, you know, maybe your producer or your engineer or, you know, just back to your laptop or whatnot. So.
Yeah, the two analogies that come to mind when you were first speaking, it sounded very similar to screenwriting software.
I don't know about screenwriting software. What do you mean?
Like, you know, I forget the name of the sort of predominant program, sort of like the Pro Tools of screenwriting.
Yeah.
I could dig it up, but anyway, you know, you launch it and it's like, I want to write a sitcom or. Yes. You know, a telenovela or,
yes.
You know, what have you. And then it has all the structure of, you know, the commentary, the stage direction, the dialogue, cut notes.
Yes.
So there was that, but then there's also an element of sort of a sketch pad. It sounds to a certain extent like just a place to store your fully or partially formed thoughts that are organized, shareable, can be demoed. If I'm grasping what you're saying correctly.
Yes.
I guess a couple of the questions I have specifically about the hardware device. What does it have for inputs and outputs, or is it a self-contained, you know, does it interface with my laptop or my equipment stack or both? Like,
so both actually. You can interface with your laptop. And you can, you know, export and import. You can import sounds. Say you have patches or things that you've downloaded that you want to put into it. Our goal for the first, you know, we're doing this Kickstarter in February, and for the first round of devices, the software that we're really trying to get right, and this, the software feature we're really trying to get right is this AI melody maker, essentially. And so one of the things that I think people get a little nervous about when they think of AI is, you know, if I use some sort of AI tool, am I cheating, first of all? Like, is it going to make me so good that I'm going to feel like I'm cheating? And is it going to be similar to what other people are making? Are there going to be copyright infringement issues? Am I going to create something that somebody else could?
Is it like a stock song type sound or something?
Yeah, exactly. And so, so one of the ways that, I illustrate that, like, no, not all. In fact, our AI models require you to input something creatively yourself. So whether that's plugging in your, quarter inch, and playing a guitar lick, and then the AI melody maker goes from there, right? You put that into the AI engine essentially, and then it will come out with several options of how to finish that melody based on what you give it. So you can do that way. You can do it. So those four dials I described, one at each corner. The two bottom ones are right next to the microphones. So there's a microphone on each side on the bottom, and those microphones actually pick up tapping. So you can actually basically, like a drum pad, you can tap out a beat on those dials. Oh, wow. And the microphone will pick it up, which is cool. So those dials kind of have a multi-function, those bottom two dials, which is kind of clever, I think, of Ali. And then another way, you could just hum in a melody, right? Like some riff that you just came up with while you were driving in LA traffic or something, and so people are doing this already, like I said, with voice memos. They're driving in traffic and they've got their cell phone and they just press record. So that was one of the features that we knew instantly, like we had to have an instant record button. It just had to exist. So, you can instantly record, if the machine's on, you can instantly record without having to go into menus or, different things. So yeah, so really our first feature that we're going to be testing in a couple of weeks, we're going to be using we're just going to be using like a general web interface to test it. Although the chip that is on the device, and one of the reasons why we actually chose to design hardware rather than just creating an app or a web app, is that the chip actually on average is making the AI models run 20 times faster than the chip in your phone or on your laptop. So that was very important to us, is to have that hardware element to it. So we're going to be testing this melody maker, which is our first, the AI feature that we think is the strongest. And really what we're looking for is just for people to experience that magic, right? One of the things, when you're writing a song, without collaborators and especially with COVID, we don't have people, we're not just hanging out in rooms even with bandmates right now, really, is that you don't have somebody pushing off of you. There's nobody pushing back on your ideas. And this affords you that ability to, put in something, get a response back. And even if you don't love the response, it is a response, right? And to what you've put out there, and it can give you ideas on a different direction to go, perhaps. So that's sort of the bread and butter right now that we're really dialing in, is that melody maker. But the rest of the device is really, it's not special. There's nothing technologically special about it, right? It's a lot of feeding you prompts. It's a lot of, nudging you, a lot notifications, a lot like, social media does. It's a lot of like, almost like psychologically playing around with some ideas around how do you inspire songwriters to stay motivated, some ideas around motivation, and the psychology of motivation. And that's what I get excited about. So so it's a combo that the technology is cool, the AI is cool. And then just how do we really get musicians and creatives to really finish songs and wrap them up in a bow,
Yeah. What's been the more difficult mountain to climb, the hardware or the software?
So it's interesting. So the hardware, our friend Kareem, he's at the Abbey Road Red Innovation Lab. It's like an accelerator program. He was bugging us for, a couple of weeks, just, hounding on this idea that why don't you just create an app, an iPhone app or a web app, or create software, much less risk, right? And we kept
It's audacious. Creating hardware is audacious. It's impressive.
Yeah, it is, right? It is. But here's the thing is that Allison had come from a background where she had created a microcontroller device for the hobbyist market. So there were these microcontrollers that you could use to control anything. And her idea came out of, we had these raised garden beds and she was trying to figure out how to automate them. You know, and Rainbird and all these guys, they weren't super specific on how to automate them. There wasn't really customizable. And of course she's an engineer, so she had all these ideas, right? So she ended up creating this platform really, of hardware devices, and then you know, sort of designing different ways for those, they called them Pinocchio Scouts, these little hardware devices. And they would work together and you could put them together and build almost anything that you wanted to automate. It was an Internet of Things sort of gadget. Mm-hmm. And so they did pretty well. They had a Kickstarter. They raised about $105K on it. And they kind of became a darling in that space. Like they would get random orders from like all these research, like SpaceX would order from them, or, you know, just a lot of really, really nerdy researchers would really enjoyed this product. But the maker market itself was not a big enough market. And they had taken VC funding. And so, you know, VCs want you to grow or die. There's no in between, right? So there was no way to really keep this company as a sort of a, you know, a lifestyle business, if you will, or a small business. So they actually ended up pivoting into into more of a commercial space, and industrial space rather. And so they did the similar things, but they ended up using blockchain and some creative solutions to, you know, exchanging value over the internet, et cetera. So using these Internet of Things devices. So basically this took her on this like 7-year journey of designing hardware herself. And it's funny, she was not a hardware designer before this, but she just failed. And, you know, I mean, there were days where she would, you know, we've been in this house for 10 years and I can still remember her at the kitchen table, you know, telling me to walk 3 blocks away with this device and seeing if she still had, you know, connection, you know, I mean, and then she would, you know, she'd be fixing bugs. It would take her like 48 hours to fix a bug. But it was just this constant, like, you know, trial and error until she just made it work, you know. And it was really kind of miraculous because she wasn't an electrical engineer. She was a software engineer by trade. So I think through that process, she really learned a lot about how to put together a hardware device, and what to build yourself and what to buy off the shelf, right? So that's one of the biggest sort of sand traps that you can fall into with designing hardware, is that a lot of hardware designers want to build everything themselves. They want to build a custom board. They want, you know, everything custom, and that's great. You can get really dialed in that way. But you can there's also so many things now that you can buy off the shelf. Like, for example, we're using a Raspberry Pi, and the Raspberry Pi is practically a computer, you know, on a small chip. Yeah. You would have to write all of that, right? All of that code and build that entire, like that's not what we're building. We're building this device, right? So we don't want to rebuild a Raspberry Pi. We want to focus on the things that we're good at, our core competencies. So
there's commodity elements that go into custom
really
hardware.
Yes, precisely. And I think that's really what the last 7 or 8 years has taught her. And so for us, we looked at it as that's where her genius lies, is in connecting those elements, is in understanding systems and being able to research, you know, the battery, being able to research, you know, sort of the nucleus of it, or the main board, and being able to figure out sort of what contingencies exist to make those systems work together, and to do it efficiently, and to do it, you know, to keep our BOM costs low enough that we can make a profit when we sell the product. All of those things are things that she's learned over the last 7 or 8 years at the startup that she ran. So for us, it was kind of a no-brainer. We were like, our core competency really has been in building hardware for the last 7 or 8 years. If it was 7 or 8 years ago, we would have done just software because that was her core competency then, right? Being a full stack software engineer. So it's really been fun because she also has to catch up in some ways on the software side because she had moved into a role. She was CTO of this last company she was at, and then she ended up moving into the CEO role. So it's a lot more management, money vision team sort of stuff. So there's things like, some of the user interface tools that she's using now weren't even around. Vue.js wasn't even around back then, 7 or 8 years ago. So it's really fun because we get to learn also while we're going, and then we get to combine that sort of with the entrepreneurial skills that we've built over the last 20 years of building businesses and such. So so that's why we went with hardware, and it is to answer your question, it is a huge lift. It is much larger than the software element, but the software element has its own challenges that are really unique, which is that we're trying to solve a problem that has been around for centuries, right? Like people have been writing songs for eons, right? So if that interface isn't just right and doesn't understand the psychology of creativity of the creative mind, and combine that with the finishing skills and the left brain sort of, process-oriented producer-type skills. If we can't combine those two under one roof, we're going to struggle, in the marketplace. Like, we just will. That's, So to your question, I guess it's both. Both are difficult. The hardware one is just a lot more work. It's a lot more boxes to check off and a lot more, she's been drawing the schematics for the board, and then she's got to get pricing on all the parts. And then, it's just a lot of just very detailed work that you have to get right. And the lead times are a lot longer than software. There's always contingencies like, if this part, if this part runs out, are there 2 or 3 other parts that are being made by other, manufacturers that we could depend on so that we're not late on our, delivery times, things like that. So you just, I don't envy her position.
Just to sort of go underneath the hood a little bit in the process or about the process of designing a device, the hardware from the ground up. You mentioned the schematic. You mentioned, there's certain pieces that I guess are very process driven. But when you're prototyping, how do you not how does one, but how did you guys? How did the two of you approach prototyping? Were you soldering? Were you flipping stuff out? Like how did it actually come to be that you ultimately held something in your hand?
Yeah, I mean, like I said earlier, I mean, it's really so in her wheelhouse to be able to find. I know very few people that can do this, and I don't know why she's wired this way, but she can go on Alibaba, or she can go, she had a couple of vendors that she worked with her last company that she can go to them and say, I need a screen. I need a touch screen. It needs to be around this size. And then they can shop with their manufacturers in China. And then they can come back to her and say, like Arrow, for example, they have a great relationship with her from her last company. She can go to Arrow and say, I need these really specific parts. Do you have them in stock, et cetera? And then they can ship her samples, basically. And then, so basically say, we'll start with a screen, and then we have to have an enclosure, right? She 3D prints, she designs the enclosure, 3D prints it in her office. She then, she gets, there's all sorts of developer kits that they'll send out for different things. Like Google has a Coral board. We're not going to be using that. We're going to be using the Raspberry Pi, but that's an example of something where she got the developer kit. She it gets shipped to her. She solders it onto her board, her breadboard, essentially. And then same thing happens with her battery pack. Like she orders a battery pack. She makes sure that schematics work with the Raspberry Pi, et cetera, plugs it in, solders it, tests it. She has a lot of testing. So, there's heat sensors and just all this really, really nerdy electronics test equipment that she just has she has a 100 square foot office, but technology now has made it so that she can do all that in a little tiny office, So she prototypes in her office, which is in our house, and she solders, she does all that. So it's really funny. She got an oven, a reflow oven that she ordered from China, and because we're doing everything, you're on a budget, right? So you're doing a startup, and you want to prototype, and you don't want to mess up too many times because you don't want to be buying 10 screens, or you want to get it right as quickly as possible. And so she has these reflow ovens because at a certain point the chips get so small that soldering them, you just end up breaking things because your fingers are just too fat. It's just not you're not at the scale you need to be, right? And so there's a way for these chips to be put onto the board with these reflow ovens. And they're like yay big, they can fit it on a desktop, basically, like on top of your desk. And but she ordered one from China because it was a much more inexpensive version. But she'll find, like some tutorial online that tells her, just so or some review that says, they put duct tape in it. So when it heats up, your whole entire house smells disgusting. Like, so before you heat it up for the first time, take that duct tape out and put in heat, basically like heat sensitive tape. And then it's a great reflow oven.
Other than the toxic chemicals it burns off, it's great.
Exactly. Who knows what those chemicals are doing to you? So, but it's things like that she just figures out and is able to really quickly sort of, find her way in a way that's efficient and cost effective, so that we can prototype as rapidly as possible.
And to date, have you bootstrapped all this?
We have, yeah. So we have totally bootstrapped. We had saved some money from our last two companies, and so we've been living off of savings essentially since around January. And just entirely bootstrapped. So I would say, we've, besides not having our regular salaries, which is a lot bigger than our actual cash investment that we've used so far on prototyping and things. So I think, besides the, not having our salaries, I think we put in less than 20K so far.
Get out of here.
Into all the prototyping we've done. So so we've been pretty efficient with our capital.
That's amazing.
We're really proud of that, actually. So.
Well, I'm curious. You mentioned Kickstarter for February. And it sounds like at least one of you, if not both of you, have had some experience launching a product that way. I haven't heard a lot about Kickstarter in the last maybe year or two. I'm kind of surprised that I haven't heard a lot during the pandemic. I would think there'd be a lot of makers and creative people launching projects, but that's just me being a focus group of one. But can you tell me a little bit about that? So what milestone do you need to hit in order to launch the campaign? Do you need to be holding a beta prototype? Like, where do you need to be confident launching? And then what happens? You put up a campaign and then what do you need? Like, what has to happen?
Funny, like a lot has changed since Allie did the Indiegogo campaign, 8 years ago or whatnot. There's like an entire economy within the crowdfunding space. So everything from like consultants to agencies that have really dialed in, the sort of cross marketing stuff and affiliate marketing and Facebook ads, Google ads,
Like a
all
professional
those
class of sort of like advisory services for
yes.
bring something to market through crowdfunding.
Yes, 100%. And you can tell too, if you've been on like Kickstarter lately, you can just tell in the quality of the videos. There's sort of like a homogeneity starting to happen on the video side, where it just looks a little less DIY. So I'm seeing a lot more creators like pay good money for an actual, videographer to do a good video.
Not dissimilar from like Airbnb. You can tell there's listings now that are like clearly like the rooms are well lit. The descriptions are well written. They might have an aerial drone shot of their property.
Yes,
like, yeah.
100%. That's exactly where you just know, like they've dialed it, And because of that, you kind of have to be dialed or else you kind of are losing your footing a little bit, I think.
Yeah.
So there's some sort of balance you've got to strike. Like, when I was going through kind of writing the script for our video, it's like you have to strike this balance of like being very obviously still a startup, like garage startup, which is what we are, right? Because you don't want them thinking with a polished video, what a lot of people start to think is maybe it's just a product you bought from China and you're reselling it or something, So you can't be too polished, but you also want to show that, they can rely on you to send them a finished product after they've sent you their money. And that like the trends, that you're on trend. There's just like some important sort of markers that it kind of signals it throws out. So there's a fine balance there that you don't want to look too professional. And then just as far as what needs to happen, a lot of things need to happen. It's crazy. So they have had a couple of Kickstarters that have gone off the rails in that like people have, raised a couple $1 million and then they haven't been able to finish the product or just like the manufacturing process maybe hasn't gone how they wanted it to. And so they've slipped on their deadlines. And so now Kickstarter does require you to have a prototype. And so we will have a prototype in hand, for the February launch. We just have a personal goal of like not delivering any more than 6 months out after the Kickstarter. So that's really our goal is like, not, to keep it between June and September delivery for a February launch. A lot of what we're doing ahead of time is, and sort of the things that are unknowns that we have to answer to feel comfortable and confident in launching, and having a serious launch, are is this AI melody maker really worth its weight in gold? Like, do people feel like it gets them so unstuck so quickly that it's magic? Like that's what we want to happen. If we can't do that, which we have our alpha test in the next 2 to 3 weeks, we won't feel comfortable launching until we have that. I just know, it's so important to the product, I think. So we built the entire design of the hardware around having an AI chip because it's faster, So that's one factor that we factor in. The other factor is just, can Allison get all of the hardware components she needs? And can they all land around the same time? Or can they all be delivered in a manner that allows for everything to come together for the product?
And basically, now you have to become a supply chain expert on top of a hardware and software engineer.
Yes. And thankfully, she had done that at her last company, thankfully. But if any one of these things fails, if we can't get the lithium battery that she's been, researching and that she really wants to have in the product, all set us back on our delivery time. So those are really, really important to get right. And so that's what she's working on right now. So I would say like the supply chain hardware design is what she's focusing on. And then the second part is the magic of the Melody Maker feature. The rest, the user interface is difficult, but we don't we don't think it's going to be a game change. How do I say this? It's not a make or break for us, because we can keep iterating on that, and we're pretty sure we can get to something that's workable on that end. The hardware piece and the AI feature are really special, and if those aren't special, then I think that frankly, I don't think it would be worth it for us to actually deliver the product. So those are the two things that we're really focused on leading up to the campaign. We have an idea, like I said earlier, about how the tutor portion of the songwriting companion will work. The notifications, there's some kind of like, unique little features where we have, our logo is very bright pink. We have like a pink light that will go off when, it will blink on the device when a collaborator has sent over files. So not unlike, remember when you got mail, AOL, when we had AOL accounts, so it's a similar feature to that, where you're kind of trained to, look over at your device and see if somebody had sent something over. And then, so there's that collaboration piece that is also part of the user interface. And that's interesting too, because we're going to have to build that out, I think, after the launch, but that will be something where we're going to have to make sure that people that don't have a Lumos device can still collaborate with bandmates who do. So that'll look like something, so maybe a lighter software version on the desktop, where they can, maybe pay a small subscription price for it, fee for it, or maybe even a free, it's a free download and it has limited features.
Do you mind me asking, do you envision a world where the software itself lives in other devices, where you license it or you power other devices with the software?
That's a great question. I know of a couple companies that are already doing that with, with AI songwriting sort of software. For us, I think we prefer to have our expertise be in the hardware. So like an ideal outcome would be, say, being acquired by Apple or somebody like that, where they're like, we have Apple Music, we're trying to compete with Spotify, we're trying to compete with these others. We want to get closer to the creators. You guys have, 500,000 creators, and all of their music is in your device,
That's exciting.
That's sort of the end game for us, right? That would be an awesome end game. Or just to keep creating really nice hardware. I mean, our inspiration comes from a company called Moog, and they've been able to create just really high quality hardware, music hardware for a couple decades now, and they run, it's kind of mom and pop still. Their employees really love working for them, and they're very ethical, and we would love to, even if it doesn't, we don't go big and sell like we're used to in the startup world, like just having a company that builds really high quality products, hardware products that help musicians would be a dream for us.
Do you know enough yet to speculate on price point, or do you have a price point you're designing towards?
Yeah, we are. It's going to be, and we're comparing it to, there's an Electron device. There's a couple different devices on the market that Sweetwater sells right now that are around the $11.99 mark. And so that would probably be, if we ended up doing channel sales, it'll probably be around that mark, $11.99. Our Kickstarter, we're doing an interesting thing where, with Kickstarter, normally people have more than one SKU, or they have, a lot of like kind of giveaways. We're just doing a thing where we're like, okay, we have one SKU, one device that we're selling. And so the first 50 devices are going to be 55% off. The second, 150 devices are going to be, 40% off the retail price, et cetera, et cetera. So basically the earlier you get in, the lower your price point is. And I think in this first run, I don't think anything will go higher than, I think our highest is $8.99. Mm-hmm. So that would be the highest price, I think, in the last week or so of the campaign.
Okay. Well, I want to make sure I get in early because I'm very intrigued and I want to play with one. So.
Yeah.
Will the software be updatable? Was it like a firmware type thing, or like as the AI gets better, like I can plug into my laptop and download?
Yes. So we are really big fans of sort of extinguishing this idea of planned obsolescence. Like, I hate nothing more. I'm totally that person that has my phone until it gets so slow that I have to update it, you know? Yeah. So we're building it for like a 7 to 9 years life cycle. So you will be able to update the firmware and you'll be able to update the software, of course. But most devices, they don't let you update the firmware. So the firmware updates will be kind of a special thing. We're also building it in such a way that we know down the road we're going to use features as it evolves, as the device evolves, but they won't be utilized yet. So like, for example, we had a decision to make a couple days ago, which was, do we use the simple barrel jack that you have as a charger in most of your synthesizers have them. They're inexpensive parts wise. Or do we use USB-C, which is, what a lot, the Switch has it now, actually the Nintendo Switch. My laptop is powered with it. And so it's a lot more complex though, right? Because the USB-C has the ability to charge other devices with your device. So like my laptop can charge my phone, right? With the barrel jack, you can't do that. So what that makes Allison's job a lot more complicated when she's building the hardware because it is so complex. So we had to weigh the pros and cons of that. It's going to be longer. So what we decided in the end was it's going to be longer upfront work for her to build a USB-C charger. But in the long term, we know that the world is going in that direction and that everything will have USB-C eventually. And so for us, we don't want to sacrifice the quality over the long term.
Yeah. Yeah, and it would make sort of V1 of the device obsolete much faster, or certainly it wouldn't feel modern. Yeah.
Yes, it wouldn't feel modern, exactly. And that's the same thing too for our dials, right? Like when you touch a Moog synthesizer, you turn the dials. Funny story, before we knew what we were going to be developing, we were at a conference, like the biggest music conference in the world in LA in January. And we walked around to every single booth that had any hardware at all, including even if it was an amp. So not just synthesizers or, recording equipment but anything that had hardware and it had knobs essentially. And we tested everybody's knobs. We would just go around and I have a video of us just, testing knobs.
There's that certain resistance that you get. Like there's a certain feel that is just, when you get that and it feels of the right pressure, right resistance, it feels so high quality. And when that's not there and it spins too freely, it feels so cheap.
Yes, exactly. And so there's all these special words for it, like action and all these different technical terms for it, but it's the same for knobs and buttons, right? Like it's like your keys on your keyboard, right? And so we really, really, really want to get those right. And so that's part of our sort of obsession is how do we make products that feel that good for that long, if we want the longevity of this product to be 7 to 9 years, it has to feel quality for that long. And so, I think of, nuts about, we always have a Land Rover car. Like one of our cars is always a Land Rover, and our other car is a Volkswagen, and our motorcycles are Ducatis, right? Like there's reasons for those things. The Ducati, the sound is unlike any other motorcycle, right? Land Rover, you can feel the quality, especially off-road. You can, Volkswagen, same thing. The German engineering especially on the interiors is just impeccable. The way the doors close, that noise it makes. So we're really big nuts around like product design. And so for us, it's not just about this product being very usable and indispensable to the songwriter, but anybody could come along that isn't a songwriter, hold this device and know, that it was designed properly and that, very thoughtfully.
Yeah. Yeah, that's important.
So yes, that's sort of the goal.
Well, I have a ton more I want to ask you about, but I know our time is sort of coming to an end. I wonder if I could extend an advance invitation and ask if maybe you'd come back when you launch the Kickstarter and you could tell me about what the challenges were to get to the last mile, because I suspect despite your very upbeat, positive demeanor, there's a lot of work between here and then. Yeah. And I'd love to hear about how you get to the screen of being launched live, and then maybe talk a little bit about some of the things we didn't get to, how you wound up where you are today, why Reno. There's a lot I'd love to learn about the two of you. So I'd like to extend the offer so that when the Kickstarter's up, I'd love to have you back.
Oh, we would love that. That would be excellent. Yeah, and it's so fun to talk to you about this.
Thank you, Ethan Clift and Allison Clift-Jennings from Tonic Audio Labs. Thank you, Macy McCullum from Rock, Paper, Scissors for making this conversation happen. Thanks to Ant Taylor and the entire team at Lyte. If you want to learn more about Lyte, visit lyte.com. That's lyte.com. And thank you for listening to Spotlight On. We're available from Apple, Spotify, Amazon, and pretty much anywhere else you get podcasts from. Please keep your feedback coming. Hit me up at lp@lyte.com. Thank you so much. Be safe and stay in touch. See the next one.